Okay, this is actually the second round of this. Recorded another video, but it ended up being sort of too rambly and was threatening to become a bigger and bigger video. And I am officially sick, so I'm trying to take it easy and not make so much video. So I'm going to record a much briefer video to just give some updates and say a few things about this COVID-19 situation. I worked on this video over the last 3 days called Fear Inoculum Predicts COVID-19. I'm going to talk a little bit about the nature of the image match here. YouTube has decided for the moment that my video can't exist on YouTube. It received a copyright strike. Thankfully, Joe Alexander maintains this Vimeo page that he lets David and I post work on sometimes. And you can view it here. Hey, 26 people viewed it here and a couple people liked it. Thank you, people. I love both of you. I don't want to get sidetracked into a big spiel about how ridiculous it is that my video got pulled. I'll just say it is clearly a fair use thing. It's like, couldn't be any more fair use. It's like a very transformational remix, right? First of all, I want to say the COVID-19 situation is a very serious situation. My models have been updating very rapidly about it over the last few days, I think as for everybody. The situation is changing very quickly as well. I think we're in for a pretty rough ride in Brooklyn and in New York City. I don't know. I really hope Congress figures out that aid package. The whole economy has been basically frozen, at least in New York. So there's a deeper anxiety setting in for people, I think, about where the next paycheck is coming from. And even though, this ban is in place, we can't be evicted for 90 days. That's nice, but everyone's still anxious about what happens at the end of those 90 days, etc. So there's still a lot of unknowns here. Like I said, I'm sick. I'm a little worried for myself, worried for folks I live with. I'm especially worried about my parents and my grandpa, who are, they're in a vulnerable demographic. And I'm spending a lot of time thinking about the people that are already being very, very profoundly disrupted, if not by immediate deaths in the family and so on, then by the economic displacements. And this is, we're in the middle of it. This is not a YouTube channel really about just anything. We have a fairly tight focus here. And I think something that I can do during this weird quarantine period is just continue to release content, exploring the aspects of this thing that I know how to grapple with at the moment. That's actually not just sync stuff. I think probably a whole lot of the psychological stuff we do on this channel and so on could be brought to bear on the situation in maybe a fruitful way. I am also thinking a lot about how this situation dovetails around sync, though. Because I'm thinking about all this stuff anyway, it just makes sense to share it, and we can maintain our little sync family here for now. So I want to shift tone a little bit here into a tone actually of excitement. And I just want to say also about that, when you're in a crisis, especially a big global crisis like this, I grew up kind of in crisis situations. I grew up in Israel during a period of time where, it's actually it got worse and worse, I think, after I left. The wall hadn't been built or anything when I was living there, but we still had plenty of suicide bombings, and I was there when Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated. There was a lot of history going on in Israel at that time, still today, of course. And so I learned a little bit about. I'm pretty adapted to these weird sort of floating anxiety, high stress situations. I really grew up in a sustained kind of situation like that. I think people in America who are above a certain socioeconomic bracket don't have to deal with that kind of thing very often. And so when something like this happens, people don't know how to deal with the fear. And then this is a unique situation too, because it's placing us into isolation. But anyway, I said I didn't want to get totally sidetracked on all these things now because I'm trying to make a concise video. I was just saying, in these kinds of crisis situations, there are going to be just a lot of complex and paradoxical reactions to it that you will have, that you'll see other people having. You're going to shake your head at some of those reactions. You're going to shake your head at some of your reactions, though, especially in immediate hindsight. You're going to look back on things you did and you're going to say, wow, that was really irresponsible. You should be a little bit kind to yourself because your models weren't configured correctly when you when you were behaving in such a way or making such. I'm just thinking about myself in terms of kind of the very early days of the situation. For me, like I actually had an epidemiologist tell me that this was going to be just a kind of a mild flu and the media was overplaying it. So that was my first pass, like awareness of the coronavirus, was some supposed authority figure telling me basically not to worry about it. And so, I continued to go about my life basically as normal, as did everybody. If we had gotten ahead of this slightly, certain aspects of it might have been mitigated a bit. Anyway, these sorts of paradoxical reactions are normal, and furthermore, they're appropriate, because crisis situations like this are huge, complicated scenarios. Everything's changing all at once, so many terrible things are happening, but strange new opportunities and so on are also being manifested in reality at the moment. And one of the things that's happening is we are now in a position to document a completely new set of precognitive artifacts relating to COVID-19, a big global event that everyone is processing and experiencing in real time. In my opinion, that makes it a candidate for precognitive effects. This is just, a hunch we have in the sync community, but a lot of us think that it's about the simultaneity of witness, which already relates to this Fear Inoculum business, all the eyes. And I should say, just make the basic syncy observation that so many in our community have already made. It seems linked to the 9/11 event, esoterically, synchronistically, just by way of the numeroglyph selection here. So another column and another spiral. It's funny to think of the fact that this global crisis receives another number that kind of lightly, subliminally implies the idea of emergency because of the 911 association. Because there seem to be so many matches, I do feel a bit excited. So that's competing with my worry and my own feelings of bodily uncomfortableness at the moment, this headache and etc. So I don't think I have the stamina at the moment to do a full markup of the correspondences here. So we'll just talk about it a little bit in kind of a free-form way. But I just want to say that this is a really profoundly high-dimensional match, easily competitive with the best 9/11 matches, in my opinion. This is, as far as I'm concerned, this is a case of real deal precog, or whatever this is. I don't want to jump the gun ever on the explanatory mechanisms, but it's something that defies probabilistic understanding. So let's talk about it a little bit. Gray sphere, red triangles of basically proportionate size relative to the size of the sphere. And Alex Gray's mandala really does look like a sphere. It's got these strangely foreshortened edges, make it look a little 3D. So gray spheres, red triangles, and basically we have the idea, I would say, in this mandala, just kind of distributed red triangles across the surface of this sphere. So that tracks as well. Furthermore, the texture detail in this thing, it's like a triangle made out of other little triangles. It's quite fractal in Alex's image. But look how similar that is to the basic texture detail on the CDC's visualization of the virus. It's totally a little blood pyramid made out of tinier geometric structures like this. I also want to note that the color palette is really profoundly accurate. We have the red triangles, the gray background. But you also notice in the CDC visualization that we have yellow elements and orange elements. And that's just what we have here. We have a little splash of yellow, and then kind of orange and slight green, but I would say kind of orange dominant irises here. So that's, if you look at the whole thing together as a kind of color map correspondence, I mean, it's not just that every color is represented, but it's basically every color and nothing else. There's no kind of rogue elements here. I mean, the only thing would be probably the slight blue and green in some of the eyeballs. But again, those, sort of looking at it as a gestalt, those work out to, I would say, orange dominant areas. So it gets all the colors and no more and no less, basically. And it gets the relative proportioning of those colors. It gets that the thing is overall a big gray object. So that's the first kind of color correspondence. But then it also gets, well, in fact, looking at this, I guess sort of the white and the black, which are represented here. We have these dark areas of shadow, and we have these white splotches. So that tracks these white areas inside of the eyeballs pretty well. So gray, black, and white, all of that's represented. And I would say, again, in pretty even proportion, more or less. And then just the little bits of yellow and bits of orange. I guess in the CDC visualization, we have more orange than yellow, whereas here it's pretty evenly matched. But in any case, very, very, very impressive color, geometry, and sort of gestalt correspondence. The thing as a whole resembles this, and many of the precise details resemble it. There are 2 mandalas that appear in the Fear Inoculum artwork. This is another one. It's just more kind of red triangles on a sphere idea. And again, I always have to emphasize, this could have been anything. This could have been anything. There's no reason this had to be a mandala. There's no reason it had to be a sphericalized mandala. There's no reason it had to have this color choice. There's no reason it had to consist of these triangular red pyramidal things. There's no, there's no reason that it had to be this way. It could have been many, 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 infinity number of ways. It happens to be this way, and wow, it's a high-dimensional match. Really profound high-dimensional match that then happens to be situated in a context, like a narrative context, because this is attached to an album that has these lyrics on it. These lyrics are all about respiratory contagion. It kind of already metaphorizes the respiratory contagion as also a contagion of fear. It relates the idea of the spreading of that contagion of fear to exponential notions to do with consciousness, shared consciousness effects at scale, right? Because the actual cover of this thing is a giant spiral made out of like an infinity mesh of eyes, That's talking about sort of network effects to do with consciousness, Well, so anyway, I'm really, I'm not fully on, so apologies if this is all a bit disorganized and sloppy, but I just wanted to put something up here as a little stub. Oh yeah, I had this open just to sort of prove that this really is the canonical image of this virus. This is the image that we're associating with this big invisible killer. There's a lot of libidinal investment on this image, similar to how it would have worked with 9/11 probably. This is a less image-centered event, of course. There's no kind of synchronized moment of visual spectacle, but there's still a lot of people looking at this picture and worrying about it and fearing it, or fearing what it represents, rather. So it's a great candidate for precognitive effects, I would say, for that reason. And, well, for me, it's just like I'm a huge Tool fan, and I've been listening to this album since it released. Obviously, I'm a nerd. I bought the insane physical copy that has this screen embedded. This, by the way, this is the most Welcome to the Future thing of all time, other than Welcome to the Future. Just this concept, like a multimedia deck with a weird music video animation that plays in it, and like the elaborateness of the design and the the kind of like retro computer graphics like feel to the whole overall aesthetic of it. I don't know. I just adore it. I also think it's my favorite album by Tool. I think it's Knocked Out Lateralis is my all-time fave, and I never thought that would happen. Anyway, now I'm really proving what a Tool nerd I am. But this one just fell into my lap. Therefore, it just hit me all at once one day. I was like, oh wow, like look at it. It's a little image of the virus here. A little image of the virus attached to a little story of the virus. It's a really astute story, because it already understands that the fear contagion is just as big of a part of it as the literal contagion. Really, I find it amazing, but it's not the only instance. I would just tell everybody, haven't seen Fear Inoculum Predicts COVID-19, go check it out here. Now I want to watch a music video by another artist I really admire, Oneohtrix Point Never. Now, it might interest you to know that my intro to Sync really involved this band. I was very interested in this band, and I was writing a book kind of about this band, and then they're not really a band. It's just like, it's this composer, Daniel Lopatin. But I was so interested in his music and heard so much in it, I now realize part of what I was hearing in it was reflections of the unconscious. So it was I was having little glimpses of a deeper level of authorship in Lopatin's work, an unconscious level of authorship. So it began with Lopatin for me. It took me in all these insane directions, and now it's kind of looped back around. So this is a cut off of Age of. I love that record. It's really, really interesting and excellent. It seems to have coronavirus precog in a couple ways. It has a song based on John Carpenter's The Thing, which is a film all about contagion and paranoia and isolation. Pretty specific mix there, actually. And it appears on Age of with lyrical content that also links it to this song, Black Snow. That's kind of an extra layer of context we can bring to bear on this. There's another cut on this album that seems to relate to this song conceptually, because they both describe ideas about infinite abysses in the lyrics. So I think they're a bit related. But then they also seem to relate in that they both sketch aspects of the COVID-19 event. So you can see right away here we have someone in like hazmat garb, surrounded by very toxic looking elements. I forget all the detail about this. I think this character even has a name or something. I don't remember. So this very specifically kind of Americana thing of like, oh God, it gets so insanely alchemical here out of nowhere, you know? It's like covered in this like perfect ring of fire and like four figures, perhaps representing the four quadrants of the self. You know, basically a mandala forms around this strange devilish cowboy. I love OPN's aesthetic. So we have this figure pointing at the Earth, right? Points at the globe there, as if to say this is going to be a global thing. I'm so eloquent tonight. Sorry, I really feel crappy. He's playing this computer keyboard like it's a piano. It's a musical keyboard. If you know OPN, you know there's a lot of weird metaphors that run through his work about the nature of keyboards and instruments and so on. So now look, we have this gas, like, and then this quarantine zone forms around him. And again, we're interacting with this picture of the whole Earth. It implies the notion of a global quarantine in its image juxtapositions there. And particularly a global quarantine that's going to isolate us with our cultural artifacts and with our media technology. It's like a little sync prophecy, somehow, that now is sort of coming true in some kind of bizarre way. I just read this article. The comfort of childhood media during lockdown. We're entering week 3 of social isolation, and I have regressed. People are diving back into the stories of their childhoods during this period of isolation in an attempt to understand what's going on, but perhaps unconsciously. I find this video very, very deeply haunting now. I find it particularly haunting because this song... First of all, I quote this. I put a little cover. I made like an acoustic guitar cover of this song in a video I made about phenomenological uncertainty. I quote it there because of this, because it seems like it's kind of about that wave of black snow. It's talking about kind of information overload in some kind of way. This playing of the fiddle for planet Earth is so ominous. Well, so anyway, there's nothing there that's as intensely dimensional in terms of the coincidental architecture that I can see on a first pass, anyway. Like what we have in the case of Fear Inoculum. That image match there is... You guys know. I know my image matches. I am, in fact, the world's leading authority on the very concept of an image match because I pretty much came up with it. And this Fear Inoculum match is... Anyway, there might not be anything quite as impressive here, but somehow I think this is more impressive in a mythic way. I think this gets some kind of deep... Like, I'll be thinking about these images in this video for a long time, probably, in relation to COVID-19. Whether it's legitimately precognitive or somehow more accidental, this piece of art has become a little parable now. It just has. It's caught in a context shift by virtue of the elements that appear in it. So the lyrics to this thing, this is the sort of final layer of weirdness around it for me. Black Snow is inspired by the Cybernetic Cult Research Unit, a 90s art collective. I have no idea if that relates to the kind of cybernetics we talk about on this channel, which is a very particular thing to do with information theory. I think this might just be more in reference to the general kind of like subcultural cybernetic idea. So, okay, here's the little short story poem thing from this cybernetic culture unit that Lopatin adapted into the lyrics of Black Snow. And this is the last thing we're going to talk about, and then I'm going to log off. So I love Lopatin's song. It's my favorite line here. House on fire, no need to smoke. I love that. One thing to note there is that, it, like Fear Inoculum, though, it does seem to pre-associate the idea of the virus contagion quarantine scenario with a story about information flow. It pre-links those ideas again. So that's now a... if you like, a meta-dimensional coincidence, because we have it manifesting across multiple works of art now. But look at this, that the original story is even stranger. The Channel Zero Black Snow cult lurks among the ruins on the underside of cyberspace. It is directed by the words of failed dub experimentalist turned apocalyptic media prophet Blind Humpty Johnson. As Channel Zero has spread, its ideas have been denounced as confused and unsound. Blind Humpty Johnson has taught Channel Zero to anticipate an impending interruption of the global media system. He foresees that, as all the signals collapse into noise, a sub-primordial chaos entity will arrive. Channel Zero says that nothing comes out of the Black Snow. Channel Zero webcast, date uncertain. As Milton slid into blindness, he tuned into the zero channel of subprimordial night, the silent howling beyond the screen that was his blind vision. Channel Zero's blind belief. The Black Snow is coming, and nothing comes out of the black snow. Black snow is when all the talking heads dissolve into chaos TV, when all broadcasts converge on noise, when all signals have been interrupted, when things without order or shape flood out of the snow-blind monitors, out of the static, the silent howling of the Tohu Bohu show. There is no programming in Tohu Bohu. In Tohu Bohu there is no pattern, no information, no content, and no format. There is no pulse or harmony in Tohu Bohu. Nothing is created in Tohu Bohu, which has neither place nor existence. Infinite realities proceed from Tohu Bohu. At 0 hour is only Tohu Bohu. Channel 0 says you ain't seen nothing yet. Nothing until the black snow hits. Nothing comes out of the black snow. Nothing comes to you live through Channel 0. Coming to you unlive. Coming to you unrecorded. Zeroing in on you. That's what we foresee. A wave of black snow. An impending, immediate, absolute collective blindness, and from among the tatters of electromagnetic shadow, seething out of the lost signal, pour the chaotic myriads, to return the earth to its primordial state. Nothing comes out of the black snow. So somehow, this song is also connected to the idea of a apocalyptic media prophet who directs a weird internet channel that warns about the coming of an information collapse. This sounds really familiar. It's like it's a little premonition about sync. The kinds of weird things us sync heads are releasing into the world right now. Okay. Get ready to wrap this video up, I suppose. Thanks everybody for hanging out and watching. Wonder how everybody's doing. I'm already starting to feel a little weird, isolation-wise. Stuff gets real. People don't know exactly what they're in for, probably. Maybe I'll make a video about that soon. Things to do while isolated. I don't know. I'm tired and congested. So, I'm going to make some tea, watch something stupid on YouTube, and then go to bed. Alright. See you in the future. Bye.
Open up your eyes, take a look at me. Get the picture fixed in your memory. I'm driven by the rhythm like the beat of a heart, and I won't stop until I start to stand out. To stand out. Some people settle for the typical thing, living all their lives waiting in the wings. It ain't a question of if, just a matter of time before I move to the front of the line. Once you're watching every move that I make, you gotta believe that I got what it takes to stand out above the crowd, even if I gotta shut out loud. Somebody's the only face that you see, gonna stand out, so you notice me.